Based on Gyarados' design, you'd think it would be a top tier OU threat. Instead, it is merely great and underused. How disappointing. Gyarados is an all-around solid Pokemon in GSC underused. Gyarados utilizes its all-around solid stats and fantastic move pool to serve as a dangerous mixed attacker, one that also provides incredibly useful defensive utility. While Gyarados might seem like it would be an all-out physical threat, it is instead more on the mixed attacking side. While Gyarados lacks a good physical stab at move, Hidden Power Flying is just strong enough when backed by Gyarados' high attack stat. Hidden Power Flying 2KOs common Pokemon like Scyther, Pinsir, and Jumpluff, while doing decent damage to Pokemon like Hypno and Granbull on the Switch. While Gyarados' special attack stat is fairly mediocre, Hydro Pump is a solid secondary stab option, being a guaranteed 2KO on Pokemon like Nidoqueen and Piloswine, the tier's premier ground types. It also threatens Granbull and Quagsire more than Hidden Power Flying can. The final mandatory move on Gyarados is Thunder, which is needed for the tier's water types, such as Slowbro, Blastoise, and opposing Gyarados. With these three moves, Gyarados can be a difficult Pokemon to handle, since its coverage hits a ton of common Pokemon. Outside of bulky electric types, like Ampharos and Lanturn, there isn't really any hard counters to a Gyarados with spikes up. Gyarados is also decently fast, outspeeding Pokemon like Blastoise, Nidoqueen, and Hypno. Outspeeding Nidoqueen is particularly good, because Gyarados is one of the few Pokemon that can reliably 2KO it, thanks to Hydro Pump. Gyarados has a few options for its last move slot, such as Roar and Double Edge, which can make it even more difficult to handle. Roar Gyarados is the one consistent phaser in GSC underused, being useful both for removing boosts and for racking up spikes damage. Roar Gyarados is notably one of the best answers to Swords Dance past Scyther, avoiding the 2KO from Wing Attack, phasing out Scyther's boosts, and 2KOing the bug with Hidden Power Flying. When Gyarados switches in on a Pokemon like Piloswine that it threatens out, it can use Roar to fight for spikes damage, potentially snowballing if it keeps dragging in Pokemon that it threatens out, like Scyther and Pinsir. Roar Gyarados is one of the better stall breakers in the metagame, since they can barely scratch Gyarados while it slowly beats them down with its attacks. Meanwhile, Double Edge does solid neutral damage off Gyarados' high attack stat, and gives Gyarados an edge when trying to break through Pokemon like Hypno. Double Edge is useful for chipping down Pokemon like Lanturn on the Switch, as well. It's just a useful attacking move in general, and is especially dangerous if Gyarados has passed the Swords Dance from Scyther. Now, while Gyarados is a solid mixed attacker, that is not the primary reason it is a staple on offensive teams. Instead, it is primarily picked for its unique and immensely useful defensive utility. Gyarados possesses an incredibly useful spikes immunity, which makes it difficult for special attackers, like Hypno and Slowbro, to wear down. Gyarados' ground immunity makes it a solid pivot into all the ground type attacks in the tier, like Earthquakes from Nidoqueen and Hidden Power of Ground from Scyther and Pinsir. Since Gyarados doesn't take too much damage from Hypno, it is free to stay in and fish for Hidden Power Flying crits against it. Slowbro is a fairly annoying Pokemon to deal with, and Gyarados is one of the better answers to it, not taking too much from Psychic and 3KOing Slowbro with Thunder. Gyarados is also solid against nicher threats in the metagame, like Growth Politoed, Sandslash, and Gligar. By far, the most important trait that Gyarados possesses, though, is its matchup against good old Piloswine. Piloswine is an incredibly dangerous and common Pokemon in GSC underused, and Gyarados is, without question, the best answer to it in the entire metagame. Gyarados is the sole Pokemon in GSC underused that can call itself a hard counter to Piloswine, because unlike Blastoise and Slowbro, Gyarados is completely immune to Earthquake. Gyarados' high special defense and lack of an ice weakness also means Ice Beam does little damage to it, unlike the tier's other flying types. The only way Piloswine can beat Gyarados is to freeze it on the Switch with Ice Beam, which is far from a reliable strategy, you know. Gyarados can then use Piloswine as an offensive opportunity, switching into it all day and beating down switch-ins like Hypno and Granbull as they are repeatedly forced in. Gyarados is a massive pain for Piloswine offenses that forego Ampharos or Lanturn, coming in on Piloswine all day and wearing down the few Pokemon that can switch into it. While Pinsir and Feraligatr can also use Piloswine as an offensive opportunity, their lack of a ground immunity meaning they can only do it 2 or 3 times, whereas Gyarados can switch in all day to Piloswine. Nothing else can take advantage of Piloswine as well as Gyarados can. The fact that Piloswine is needed on offensive teams for so many special attackers, and then Gyarados can just come in like, hey, and then just threaten the rest of its team, is an amazing niche. For most of GSC Neo's history, Gyarados was seen as okay. Not bad, but not amazing either. Gyarados could be a decent mixed attacker, but it was held back by its awful 4 times electric weakness. Gyarados is also weaker than other mixed attackers, like Nidoqueen, because its physical stat was low base power, and its special attack stat was just mediocre in general. Gyarados was a typical B+ kind of Pokemon. It could be scary on occasion, but its flaws held it back. Gyarados would, however, end up rising to greatness in GSC Undios. It all started in 2020, when people began to evaluate Gyarados more, and they realised all the unique traits it had. It could check Scyther, it was immune to ground, and it was a decent stall breaker. Gyarados saw a big spike in usage in 2020, as players began to make more use of its traits. This is when people realised that Hydro Pump, Thunder, Hidden Power Flying, and Roar was probably the best set for it. Gyarados continued its solid streak throughout 2021, but it really kicked into overdrive late in that year. Piloswine had reared its ugly head out of the shadows, and it was terrorising the metagame. Players were scrambling for checks to it, and they realised just how good Gyarados could be against Piloswine. Gyarados was the one thing that could hard counter Piloswine, and then it could threaten its switch-ins with its coverage. Gyarados was already good, but the discovery of this niche really sold people on it. It became a top Pokemon in terms of usage in every team tournament after that. Countering Piloswine and then being annoying to switch into is that good of a niche. Every team needs a check to Piloswine, and Gyarados is certainly the easiest to fit on teams. Gyarados does possess some pretty shitty flaws though, that keep it from being one of the best Pokemon in the metagame. The biggest one is certainly Gyarados' 4 times weakness to electric, which seriously hurts its viability when you consider how many Pokemon use electric moves as coverage. Mr. Mime, Haunter, Nidoqueen, Omastar, and opposing Gyarados all use electric moves religiously, which means they can threaten Gyarados hard. Electric types themselves, like Electabuzz, Magneton, and especially Lanturn, give Gyarados an even harder time. Lanturn in particular destroys Gyarados, since it resists Hydro Pump and Hidden Power Flying. Letting in Lanturn is awful for the offensive teams that Gyarados fits on, due to how difficult it is for them to switch into it. Gyarados also lacks the power to become a truly threatening mixed attacker, due to the low base power of Hidden Power Flying and Gyarados' mediocre special attack stat. This makes Gyarados pretty unreliable at breaking through common Pokemon like Granbull and Hypno. Since Gyarados rarely uses Rest, it is also vulnerable to all status moves, and has to run away from threats like Thunder Wave Hypno. Regardless, Gyarados is cool. Look at that design. It's a fucking water serpent.